Shot and killed after a deadly fight erupted in front of Monaco Hookah Lounge. Two men approached King Von and his group in the parking lot, and an argument ensued. The argument quickly escalating to a shootout between the two groups.
In a courtroom that shook the rap world, Lil Durk broke down in tears and revealed the explosive truth. He killed King Von over a $100 million deal. The room fell silent as emotions ran high, tensions boiled, and the truth spilled out like a blockbuster movie. This is the moment hip-hop history will never forget. The air was thick with tension as Lil Durk sat in the courtroom, his hands trembling, eyes red from holding back tears for what felt like an eternity. The trial had already been a roller coaster of emotions, but nothing could have prepared the audience, both in the courtroom and watching millions around the world, for what was about to come. With a voice barely above a whisper, Durk finally broke down, his composure shattering like glass. He looked at the judge, then at the jury, and said those three words that would send shockwaves through the entire rap community. Did it. He didn't just say it once.
Was made before the murder happened. I don't personally believe it's possible for a lyric so obviously describing the circumstances of what exactly happened after the murder. To me, it just cannot be possible. I don't care that you've got a screenshot of, like, I just don't care that you've got a screenshot of some metadata a few months before to say, oh, well, a file was created before the murder happened, so it can't, like, bro, you could have jumped back in the studio and edited that bar to be like, yo, let me just throw an extra bar on this before we drop this song so I can really just, like, mock the victim of the murder. Like, can we just change that? Like, that just doesn't mean anything to me, right? So this is just like, I just wanted to give you that context and just explain to you that, like, Lil Durk is trying to get out based on this little finesse, and he's trying to put everything all on this, like, one fan-made version of the song where they took Quando Rondo's "No" and superimposed it onto the song of Lil Durk.
He repeated it each time with more conviction, more pain, more weight behind the words. It wasn't a confession in the cold, calculated way you see in movies. No, this was raw, unfiltered emotion. A man who had spent years trying to outrun the past now stood face to face with it, and he couldn't run anymore. As the news spread across social media, fans were stunned. Some couldn't believe it. Others were screaming into their phones, yelling at the screen. But one thing was clear. Hip-hop was about to change forever. Lil Durk, born Durkoy McKinley, was not just any rapper. He was a force of nature, a Chicago legend who built his empire on street stories, deep beats, and a sound that resonated with a generation. His music told tales of struggle, loyalty, and survival, and for years, people thought they knew every chapter of his story. But now, with King
as evidence, the issue of the timing of Mr. Banks' recording of the lyrics verse in question is not one of the frivolous or inconsequential value. It is quite the opposite. The government's misrepresentations about the creation and meaning of Wonderful Wayne are the linchpin of the superseding indictment's theory of Mr. Banks' guilt. There's no way that's all the evidence they have. Well, they have more, but it was just text messages. There's got to be more, right? It can't just be lyrics. We've all seen how lyrics go in the YSL trial. Following the attempted murder of TB and the murder of SR, defendant Banks sought to commercialize SR's death by rapping about his revenge on TB with music.
Von's murder case dominating headlines and courtrooms, it became clear that the real story was far more complicated and far more dangerous than anyone ever imagined. King Von, born David Bennett, was another titan in the rap game, a rising star with a voice full of charisma and a style that blended Southern flow with Midwest grit. He was quickly becoming one of the most promising names in the industry. His death in November 2022 sent shockwaves through the hip-hop community, sparking debates, conspiracy theories, and endless speculation. Now with Lil Durk finally breaking down and confessing his involvement, the truth was coming out, but not without controversy. As Durk continued to speak, the courtroom grew quieter. He described how a business deal worth $100 million went sideways, leading to betrayal, paranoia, and ultimately bloodshed. The details were staggering. The stakes higher than any—
Like, you are literally in jail right now for what you just said in this song.
Right.
For what you just said in this song.
But that's the thing, though, is there's two types of people. There's the me and yous who look at it like that's dumb as fuck, because everything you just said, you literally spelled it out in the music. And then there's the other group of people that are like, oh, we want to listen to it more, because when he says he's with killers, he's really with killers. So it's like, that's, you know, people like the authenticity.
Anyone had anticipated. People had assumed it was a simple gang dispute or a feud between two artists, but it was something much bigger. It was money, power, and pride all colliding in a deadly way. I was scared, Durk admitted, his voice cracking. I didn't want to do it, but when you get pushed to the edge, you don't think straight. I thought I was protecting my family. I thought I was doing what I had to do. But what exactly did he mean by that? Who pushed him to the edge? And why did a $100 million deal become a death sentence? To understand the full scope of this case, we have to go back to the roots of both men, their rise to fame, their relationships, and the events that led to that fateful night in Atlanta. We have to explore the music, the money, the loyalty, and the lies, because this isn't just a story about a murder. It's a story about ambition, betrayal.
Of Lil Durk, Wilson, Jones, Lindsay, Houston, and another co-conspirator traveled from Chicago to Los Angeles to murder Quando Rondo. Meanwhile, Lil Durk and Kevon Grant traveled on a private jet from Miami to LA allegedly to help coordinate the murder. That same day, Banks allegedly texted co-conspirator 3, "Don't book no flights under no names involved with me." But the feds say that same co-conspirator purchased the plane tickets using an OTF credit card. The unnamed co-conspirator 3 also allegedly confirmed to DeAndre
and the price of success in a world where everything is on the line. Durk's admission has thrown the entire case into chaos. Prosecutors are scrambling to adjust their strategy. Defense attorneys are working overtime to find new angles. And fans are left wondering if they'll ever know the complete truth. What was once a straightforward murder trial has now turned into a media circus, with every twist and turn being dissected, debated, and discussed. And yet, through all the noise, one question remains at the center of it all. Was this really about a $100 million deal, or was there something else at play? As the trial continues, we're witnessing a battle not just in the courtroom, but in the public eye. Every word Durk says is scrutinized, every move he makes is analyzed, and with each passing day, the lines between fact and fiction blur further. But one thing is certain, this case is far from over, and the fallout will
contains only one new material alleged fact that the original indictment does not. So basically the lyrics that he sought to commercialize the death by rapping about the revenge. Told me they got that Addy go-go, got location go-go, green light, go-go-go-go. Look on the news and see your son, you screaming, no, no, pussy. The underlying falsehood. For the superseding indictment's allegation about the meaning of Banks' lyrics, they described SR's killing and referenced media about it. Banks would have need to have penned them after the August 19th, 2022 shooting. Banks did not, however, write those lines after the shooting. He wrote them 7 months.
Will be felt for years to come. So what does the future hold for Lil Durk? Will he walk free, or will the weight of his actions finally catch up to him? What about the legacy of King Von? How will this affect the careers of everyone involved? And perhaps most importantly, how will this shape the future of hip-hop itself? These are the questions that need to be answered, and as the drama unfolds, one thing is clear. This is a story that won't be forgotten anytime soon. Lil Durk's confession came as a complete surprise to many. For months, the case had been building toward a climax, but no one expected the rapper to break down in the courtroom and admit guilt so openly. It was a moment that defied expectations, a twist that few saw coming. In the days leading up to the hearing, rumors swirled about potential plea deals, witness testimonies, and even the possibility of Durk taking the stand in his own defense. But instead, he chose to tell his side.
The defendants under the bus, because he's saying that Lil Durk can't have it. You got those guys, but my guy's innocent, you know? Hey, it's a dirty game, man. We already seen this with O Block. They lawyers. When it comes to the end, man, they get to throwing people out the way. But Lil Durk, what Lil Durk is trying to do is Lil Durk is trying to, he definitely separating himself on this shit. And he trying to get the information that the feds got. That's what Lil Durk really trying to do. Like, they trying
of the story in the rawest form possible. Tears, trembling hands, and all. I didn't want to be here, he said, looking around the courtroom. I didn't want to talk about it. I tried to bury it. I tried to move on, but I can't live with the guilt. I can't sleep at night knowing what I did. His words hit hard, especially considering the emotional impact King Von's death had on his family, friends, and fans. The rapper's younger brother, Dreezy, who is also a musician, had been vocal about his grief and anger since the shooting. Now, with the person responsible finally speaking out, the pressure is on to ensure justice is served, not just legally, but emotionally and spiritually. But what exactly happened that night in November 2022? According to Durk, the situation escalated after a failed business meeting involving multiple parties. The details are still unclear, but what we do know is that tensions were high, tempers were short.
We used to.
My wife, 24/7, we be in just prayer. You know, learning Arabic, I've been in these books heavy, just read up on the history and just everything. I don't really be walking around talking and playing and doing none of that. We'll play basketball, but I always try to stay focused and busy. That's why I don't really talk to the outside like outside of the family, because I don't want to hear all the extra shit, the bullshit, the drama, the shit. I really just, yeah, you know.
Hey, he's only the family for real, man. You know, OTF through and through. At the end, the only people who he was speaking to, the only people that were there for him were his family. You know, all the shooters and the killers and the guys that probably hyped him up to slide for Von. That's really unfortunate. You know, it's sad, but that's not who's there for him. You know, I wonder how many OTF affiliates he's even keeping in touch with at this point.
You know, I just really just stay in the learning mode.
Hey, I know you cooking them niggas and balling there, man. I know you was nice. You was nice out here. Don't tell me you lost the skills on you now. I know you cooking.
Short, and a confrontation turned fatal. The exact cause of the conflict is still under investigation, but Durk claims it all started with a disagreement over a multi-million-dollar deal that was meant to bring together two powerful factions in the music and business worlds. People don't understand how big that deal was, he explained. It wasn't just about music. It was about real estate, branding, merch, everything. We were talking about building an empire, but then things got messy. Trust broke down. People started doubting each other, and I guess I lost control. His statement paints a picture of a deal gone wrong, but it doesn't explain the full context. Who were the other players in the deal? Were there other rappers or business figures involved? And most importantly, was King Von truly the target, or was he just caught in the crossfire? As the case moves forward, these unanswered questions will continue to fuel speculation and debate. And with
So some fan incorporated the clip of Quando Rondo screaming at his friend's dead body over the music video. It wasn't through Durk's channel. The original authentic version of the song, Mr. Sharif confirms, does not contain these manipulated elements. He tests that creating altered audio edits is easy to do through social media platforms, and such practice often result in misinformation and misrepresentation of original pieces of music and art. Argument: superseding indictment is not sustainable against Mr. Banks in the face of the fundamental factual error upon which the grand jury relied. That's crazy. If the grand jury actually was shown
the media circling like vultures, every detail will be examined, every motive questioned, and every possible angle explored. But one thing is certain. This case is no longer just about two rappers. It's about the entire culture, the system, and the cost of living life in the spotlight. Hip-hop has always been a genre defined by its struggles and triumphs, but in recent years, it's become increasingly intertwined with the legal system. From Drake and Pusha T's feud to Meek Mill and R. Kelly's battles, the courtroom has become as much a part of the rap game as the stage. And now, with Lil Durk and King Von at the center of the latest drama, the stakes have never been higher. What's interesting is that Durk's confession comes at a time when the music industry is undergoing major changes. Streaming services are reshaping the way artists make money. Independent labels are gaining power, and fan support is more
the top of it as evidence for this superseding indictment, and that isn't the original song, then that's a pretty heavy mistake on the government's part. And honestly, I feel like if that is what the superseding indictment was based on, it should be dismissed, because not only do you have Lil Durk saying that that ain't the original, you've got the producer and the engineer of that record saying that that is not the original. So it goes on to say Lil Durk does not take lightly the request that he is making of this court. Dismissal is in all cases a drastic step and thus generally disfavored. That is especially so when a defendant challenges the nature of the evidence that the government presented to induce an indictment. However, court intervention is necessary in cases like this to ensure that a charging decision is the product of a grand jury's own unbiased and untainted judgment. The grand jury's independence and integrity are deeply rooted in our Constitution. It is an institution of constitutional dignity.
More crucial than ever. In this climate, the idea of a $100 million deal seems almost surreal, but for someone like Durk, who has spent years climbing the ladder and building a brand, it's not just a number, it's a symbol of everything he's worked for. I've been fighting for this since I was a kid, he said during the hearing. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to provide for my family. I wanted to prove that I could make it out of the streets. But sometimes the price is too high. His words reflect the reality that many artists face. Success often comes with a heavy burden, the pressure to stay relevant, the fear of losing everything, and the constant scrutiny from fans and critics alike can take a toll on even the strongest minds. And for Durk, it seems like the stress of the situation may have been too much to handle. But was it really about the money, or was there something deeper at play? That's the question that lingers in the air, because while
If it is established that the violation substantially influenced the grand jury's decision to indict, or if there is grave doubt that the decision to indict was free from the substantial influence of such violations, the false information here easily clears that threshold. As described above, the lyrics were one of the only two pieces of evidence that the superseding indictment cited against Banks. The other was a text message that discussed the names under which the flights should be booked. And it was the only piece of evidence that, as the superseding indictment portrays it, at least directly linked Lil Durk to Lul Pabb's homicide. More to the point, the lyrics are one of the only two differences between the superseding indictment, which charged Lil Durk, and the original indictment, which identified him as only co-conspirator one. For the grand jury not to have been substantially influenced by that evidence in its decision to indict is inconceivable. Now, they also have the exhibits that were attached to that.
the $100 million deal may have been the catalyst, it's unlikely to be the only factor. There are layers to this story that haven't been fully uncovered yet. There are relationships that have been tested, alliances that have been broken, and secrets that are still waiting to be revealed. And as the trial continues, we can expect more surprises, more revelations, and more drama. Because in the world of hip-hop, nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Durk's admission has already changed the trajectory of the case, where once the focus was on proving his innocence, it's now about determining the severity of his actions and the consequences that will follow. If he's found guilty, the punishment could be severe, but if he's seen as acting in self-defense or under duress, the outcome could be very different. Either way, the ripple effects will be felt throughout the industry. Artists will be watching closely, learning from this case, and use
2024, prosecutors say Lil Durk allegedly tried to flee the United States and booked plane tickets to several different countries, including Italy, Switzerland, and Dubai, but didn't board the plane for any of the flights. Instead, he was arrested near Miami International Airport. And even though Lil Durk isn't accused of pulling the trigger, he faces the same charges as the other men, including 1 count of conspiracy, 1 count of use of interstate facilities to commit murder for hire resulting in death, and 1 count of using, carrying, and discharging firearms and
using it as a cautionary tale. Fans will be divided, some supporting Durk, others demanding justice for King Von. And the conversation about accountability in hip-hop will only grow louder. But what about King Von's legacy? How will this affect his memory and his music? For now, the answer is uncertain, but one thing is clear: his music will continue to live on. Songs like Crazy Story and Toxic have already cemented his place in hip-hop history, and with new projects being released posthumously, his influence shows no signs of fading. As for Lil Durk, his next steps are equally important. Whether he walks away from this ordeal with his career intact or faces serious consequences, one thing is certain: he's made a lasting impact on the industry, and whether people love him or hate him, they can't deny the effect he's had on hip-hop. In the end, this case is more than just a murder trial. It's a reflection of the world we live in, where money...
So I think the question should really be, will he survive the case instead of will he beat the case? Because what history is there of people beating a case like this? And just flat out beating it? I don't know anybody. It's a sad thing to fucking think about, but this ain't a state case, and this is people flew to another state to murder somebody.
Power and reputation can collide in the most tragic ways. It's a reminder that even the most successful people can fall victim to their own ambitions, and it's a testament to the resilience of hip-hop, which has always found a way to turn tragedy into triumph. So as we watch this story unfold, let's remember one thing: the truth is out there, but it's not always easy to find, and in a world where perception is everything, the hardest part might not be finding the facts, it might be figuring out which ones matter most. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most shocking moments in hip-hop history, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more exclusive content like this. Stay tuned for the next episode, where we'll break down the legal implications of Durk's confession and what it means for the future of the case. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update.
Regard to his possible acts and things of that nature. And so it doesn't come as a surprise here. One of the things the government charged here is conspiracy, and they're alleging that OTF, or Only the Family, is essentially this umbrella of an organization that engages in criminal activity or a pattern of criminal behavior, including the murder for hire. They're alleging that Lil Durk is the primary principal who is essentially instructing other individuals to commit these acts. And so certainly they would be going after him, not only the trigger pullers and anybody else who may be lower level.
And, Lil Durk has been behind bars now since October. His trial was supposed to kind of start relatively soon, but now it's pushed back to October of this year. I want to ask you, what do you think the federal trial against Lil Durk could look like, given what appears to be this overwhelming kind of evidence against him?
I expect his trial to more than likely be months long. It could take anywhere from a month to a few months. I think it was a good move on the defense end to adjourn the trial out so that they can get through all of the discovery. They can continue through their investigations and things of that nature. And they really want to bulletproof their defense. And adjourning the trial till October really gives them an opportunity to do that. Now, of course, Lil Durk doesn't want to sit there. Nobody wants to sit, in prison or incarceration. But I think that was the best move necessary to protect his rights. As far as the trial and what that will look like, I expect that there's going to be a lot of evidence that the government's going to be using. I think that they're going to try to go at this in the way that the prosecution went after Young Thug and his group, and do a prosecution that includes all of the defendants and at one trial, or consolidate the defendants into one proceeding because of the amount of evidence and the witnesses that they would use. So I expect that, but I expect Durk's attorneys to really go after the prosecution in this case. And while they're trying to point together and pin together these alleged acts that have spanned, I think, since the initial 2020 shooting incident, the defense is going to attack it each and every step of the way.
Do you think prosecutors will use music and his own lyrics kind of against him in trial?
I am expecting that is going to happen. And I personally, as a defense attorney, have a significant issue with that. We have a First Amendment